From 2012 to 2017, a biopharma company called MiMedx was engaged in something nefarious. On Thursday, November 19th, the CEO and COO were convicted of securities fraud. They each faced 20 years in prison. Joe Munda, a vice president at First Analysis, was the first sell-side analyst to uncover the fraud at MiMedx. It was him and other short sellers like Mark Cahodes, whose relentless pursuit of the fraud led to an official investigation and the charges. We spoke to Joe the day before the verdict was reached, and he runs through the series of events that revealed how management was inflating revenue and what it felt like downgrading the stock against a tidal wave of bullish analysts that chose to look the other way. We hope you enjoy this short story with Joe Munda.
Hi, I'm Freddy of Muddy Waters Capital, and I'm here today interviewing Joe Munda of First Analysis. For those people that don't know, Joe was actually at the tip of the spear on MiMedx. He was really the first sell-side analyst to get a handle on what was going on there. And yeah, real pleasure to have you on Zer0es TV.
Thanks for having me. Really big admirer of your work as well with Carson. You guys do tremendous work. So it's an honor and a privilege to be talking to you.
So Joe, curious to learn a little bit more about how you actually got into the industry, and also, how you kind of progressed through it, First Analysis.
So I started my research career at a boutique shop, Sidoti & Company in New York, run by Peter Sidoti. I started there as covering microcap names for a group that he had just started and really cutting my teeth in understanding and learning the research business. I'd worked there for roughly 5 years. By 2012, I think in 2012, I was named Best on the Street by the Wall Street Journal. I was making my name for myself in the healthcare arena. And then, one day I got a call from a recruiter asking me if I'd be interested in moving to Chicago. There's this firm, First Analysis. I said, no, probably not. I'm good here in New York. Family's here. Everybody's here. But they had this venture opportunity, this venture fund that, really intrigued me. So I went for the interview, flew out there, came home that night, talked to my wife and said, you know what, maybe we move to Chicago. So yeah, I got the go ahead or the acceptance from the firm a couple weeks later. And, I've been at First Analysis now 5.5 years. And I love the people I work with. They're great people. Give us the freedom to do, to do what we need to do. There's nobody breathing down my neck. It's just a really, really great place to work, and I couldn't be happier. It's a testament to the Nicklins who, founded First Analysis.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you first came to come across MiMedx?
In regards to MiMedx, how I first came across it, kind of interesting. I was back in 2016, right around Christmas time, I get a call from one of our clients who says, have you seen this lawsuit? No, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's MiMedx lawsuit. It's crazy, alleging channel stuffing in the VA. So, no, I haven't really checked it out. So I get on Pacer, pull it up, start reading this thing. I said, oh my God, can this be really happening? Started looking at what was being alleged in the lawsuit versus what was in the filings, and there was a huge disconnect between the two. So that started the odyssey that was MiMedx.
When you first were looking at the company, you were hold, you had a buy recommendation, how was that? Where were you positioned first?
When I first picked up coverage of the company, I was what we call overweight. So buy rated. You looked at the company on the surface, right? You had this accomplished executive in H Petit who had built companies prior and sold those companies and really made a lot of money for shareholders. Here he is coming in and doing it again, arguably his last ride, if you will, doing it with this really, call it innovative technology at the time of taking human medical waste, really, with amniotic tissue and using it to heal wounds, diabetic foot ulcers. So it was really, really intriguing. And you had this management team in there. And then you looked at the numbers and it was explosive. plus 20% growth, 30% growth, even higher. And you think to yourself, you have all these factors, a really high margin business, really innovative use of human tissue in this application, and then you have this accomplished CEO taking the reins here, and it seemed like a recipe for success. Early 2016, I had management on Non-Deal Roadshow here in Chicago. They were very bullish on the business. They were very bullish on the recent acquisition of Stability Biologics, very bullish on where the business could go. Literally 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, they come out with earnings and the story changes. And to me, all of a sudden, red flag goes up. Story is a little bit inconsistent here. So we downgraded to call it an equal weight or neutral, and then carried that rating all the way up until May of 2017, when we then went ahead and downgraded it to sell.
Up until that point, what had been your interaction with the company? Because, one thing I find interesting as a short seller is we often don't engage on a personal level with the companies. Occasionally we do, but very often we observe from a distance. So we might be reading through transcripts, watching videos of management, but we don't really, for want of a better word, build up like a personal relationship with anyone on the management team until you'd kind of shifted your view. How had your relationship with management evolved?
All the way up until we pretty much downgraded it to a sell, I would say. I mean, the relationship was pretty good. Pete, may not have agreed with me, but he respected me and he said such in an email to me. The relationship was fine. I was on the calls, being able to ask questions, follow-up calls afterwards. We did an NDR in 2016. I used to see him out at JP Morgan. I had been down to Atlanta before, or Marietta, if you will. So the relationship was good. I understand, part of our job as sell-side analysts is trying to build a relationship with management, right? Because there is so much competition for that mind share with management.
That takes you all the way through to 2017, and then you receive an email from a client with the lawsuit. Had something like this happened before? I mean, what was your initial reaction as you getting into the channel stuffing allegations?
It was a little bit of disbelief. Middle of December, late December at the time, I knew I had the JP Morgan conference coming up in early January, and I had an opportunity to speak to management face-to-face. I read through the lawsuit, read through the filings, trying to understand, what the implications were. I had a whole list of questions ready to go at JP Morgan. At that point, at the JP Morgan conference, when I met with management, it was still pretty cordial, the conversation. And when it turned into, a little bit of these allegations, first off, Pete wasn't even there. I wound up talking to the CFO, who basically were saying that, these whistleblowers were liars and can't be trusted. But what I did glean in my research was I found on LinkedIn one of the whistleblowers, his LinkedIn page, and on it, he said he was the highest producing rep for the company. I don't know, $6 or $7 million in revenue he said he accounted for. And I brought that up to them during the meeting. There was a little bit of a pause, awkward pause on their part, but they continued to say, look, they're lying, they're extorting us, they're looking for money from us, it's all, BS. And then after I left that meeting, a couple hours later, I'll never forget, I'm walking back to the hotel, heading towards my next meeting. I get a call from the IR guy. And he says to me, how did you know, I think the guy's name was Luke Tornquist, the rep. He said, how did you know that he was the highest producing rep in the company? And I said, it's on his LinkedIn page. He froze up a little bit and he started to give me more excuses as to what was going on. Right then and there, after I hung up the phone, I knew that there was something not right here. I knew, and it compelled me to dig deep.
At this point, you're starting to get pretty skeptical of the company. Clearly, the company's on the back foot. What happened next? Because, I remember and, read decent amount of your coverage, I mean, you went from a little bit skeptical to, much more aggressive than most guys I've ever seen on the sell side, and work was spot on. It was really great. So, take me from I'm a little skeptical, this doesn't smell right, to, full blown, like effectively calling this out as a fraud.
Over the course of the work, the company started holding conference calls beyond the regular quarterly calls, and we started asking a number of different questions on these calls. And apparently, a number of former employees were also listening into these calls. They reached out to me and they said, "You're on the right track. You should keep digging. Take a look at this." And so I started really, really digging into this thing, particularly on the VA sales side, and it's just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me what was going on in terms of revenue recognition and just the financials in general on that side of the business. The company had always been somewhat holding things close to the vest on the different aspects of the business, but there was a lot of sort of inconsistencies in their dialogue to the street, and you'd go back and you'd read the transcripts and compare the notes, and it just didn't make sense. It really didn't make sense. As that progressed and we started asking more and more questions, particularly around some of the pricing on the VA pricing schedules, as well as some of the sizes that were there in the schedule that the company was offering to the commercial side of the business, but not to the government, and vice versa, it started not to make a whole lot of sense. And then we actually found a purchase order. It was not a purchase order, but it was kind of like an RFP, just randomly. We found it online, and they had the MiMedx rep under the distributor, representing the distributor, and it didn't make any sense. The guy worked for MiMedx. He didn't work for the distributor. We had a list of questions. We reached out to the CFO. He acknowledged the questions. We waited more than a week. Emailed him again, no response. We went with our note, just basically putting the questions forward to them to get an answer in the public forum and compel them to answer these questions. And that's when it really started to get animus between management and myself.